Storm, earth, and fire, heed my call.
I am the son of the wind and rain. Thunder beckons and I heed the call. If I die upon this day, in battle I will fall. Hear me, brothers, gather up the wolves. To battle we will ride. War drums echo the beating heart, pounding foam inside. Storm, black clouds fill the sky. Earth, hear my battle cry. Fire, thunder will bring forth death from the power of the to the Warsaw clan, to no matter will I kneel. Feel the power and the energy.
Hello everyone and welcome to Outriders New Horizon. In today's video I'm going to share with you my new favorite Pyromancer build with the best potential single target DPS I have ever seen without investing anything in firepower. We're focusing on using the Reforged set and not the Akari set. In this way we'll have a little bit of AoE without losing so much our focus for the single target DPS. This is definitely one of the best builds I wanted to try for a group because it debuffs the enemies and helps your teammates to deal a lot of more damage. However, due to some circumstances, you will see a link in the description, I'm reluctant to join a multiplayer group, and that's why I only tested this in Challenge Tier 15 Expedition solo, and it works great. This build works quite well because we focus on damage multipliers. We apply everything for debuffs and multipliers from our class trees and mods. That's why we're dealing a lot of damage, and our weapon mods are actually will do the heavy lifting. But without any further delay, let's have a closer look at the build, starting with our skills. Because of the rework Reforged set, we have to use both Feed the Flames and Thermal Bomb to get that 75% increase for both skills when you use one and the other. And Ash Blast is the last skill because we're going to use Death Sentence and mods and talents to further increase our damage against enemies afflicted by Ash. This is perfect for crowd control and damage increase, and of course Thermal Bomb, thanks to Branded, will further debuff the enemies for much more damage increase. Now for the armor and mods. You will see everything in the background, but let's have a closer look at one piece at a time. For the Reforged set, the chest, the head and the legs to maximize anomaly power. And for the head I left double fan. We need Thermal Bomb to affect two targets to make sure that it hits the elites and proc as many explosions as we can. That Sentence, one of the best debuffs for the Pyromancer. It will debuff the whole map for enemies to take 40% extra weapon damage and 30% extra anomaly damage. For the chest, once again the Reforged, we leave Branded, the best debuff mod for the Pyromancer, and I have added Ashen Boost, another 20% increased damage for enemies inflicted by Ash. For the legs, I recently made a change. I was initially using the Westloath of the Reforged with Flame Grasper, so Feed the Flames will heal 2 additional targets. However, I didn't find so much DPS increase due to the Feed the Flames, and I do prefer to make this change. I haven't tested it much, but I believe this works better. Leave the Fire Frenzy and replace the Flame Grasper with Bullet Kindling to deal 20% even more damage to enemies afflicted by burn, thanks to the Thermal Bomb. For our hands, something with anomaly power, cooldown reduction and definitely status power. We lack status power from the Reforged set and we need that power to further increase the duration of the Ash and vulnerability we inflict to the enemies. Now anomaly power will help us increase the damage of Thermal Bomb. However, you can replace a couple of pieces I will tell you later in order to increase your survivability with max health. Now, for my gloves I've used Ash Increase Rage and Empowerment. This is actually the flex slot. I have recently changed from the Flame Grasper. This will help us deal a little more damage for AoE. However, I will make some recommendations a little later in case you want to increase survivability or just try something else. But Ash Increase Rage is a must to affect the whole map with the Ash Blast. And for the boots, I'm using the same stats, anomaly power, status power, cooldown reduction, Captain Hunter, another multiplier against enemies, elites and bosses, and damage absorber is the minimum requirement for survivability. Although you have insane crowd control capabilities, huge damage in long range, I do believe damage absorber is just enough to survive a couple of alpha jumps or some bullets from the gunners that deal a lot of damage lately. Now about the flex slot, you can replace the empowerment for some more survivability against enemies that deal anomaly damage with Circle of Power. If you've seen my videos, this is one of my favorite mitigation tools to get 45% resistance, which will make a huge difference when you face Altered, when you face Moloch, when you face bosses that deal enormous amount of anomaly damage, and yes, this makes a huge difference. That's why I do recommend it in case you want to have a little survivability. That being said, if you want to have overall a little more AoE, empowerment is good. Power simulation is okay. I don't really like it for this build. And another thing I would going to try is Big Boom. So thermal bomb explosion, we have 20% extra radius. That's why I'd recommend. Unfortunately, there aren't any more modes that increase single target DPS. However, if you want to increase your armor a little bit, protection by the flame isn't working very well. You have to kill the enemies with your weapon, not your mod, so it won't proc as often. That's why you can use something like rejuvenation to increase your armor, to survive a little easier against gunners, elites, or alphas that jump you, although, because as I told you of our crowd control capabilities, I don't believe you need that. Most likely you will need Circle of Power to survive against anomaly attacks that are from high range, rather than more physical attacks. Another thing you can replace for the gloves and boots, you can replace them with a piece that has max health, cooldown reduction and status power. I wasn't very lucky with my drops and I didn't get the ideal things I wanted because I got something with healing received. This way you will increase your health without losing single target DPS. However, you will lose some damage from your thermal bomb from AoE, because thermal bomb will deal less damage, and in the cost of survivability. You can either use one or two pieces. Two pieces is the maximum effect to maximize your survivability, to get 8,000 more health, to get around 27,000, but at the cost of a lot of anomaly power, but you won't lose any single target DPS. I have tested this and it works very well for single target by only sacrificing the AoE due to the drop in anomaly power. Now about our weapons. I have tried many weapons. The Funeral Power with Shadow Comment and Claymore Torrent can be one of the best. However, I do want to spam my weapons, so my second choice was the Damascus Offering with Claymore Torrent and Shadow Comment, but still something was missing. I needed more often to proc my mods. That's why I added Ultimate Storm Whip with the Damascus Offering, but once again, it doesn't have the best reload speed or RPM compared to the Thunderbird. That is my to-go weapon after a lot of testing, and I do like the Ultimate Storm Whip and Claymore Torrent. They deal a huge amount of damage during the periods of the debuffs, and you can just melt down the bosses or faraway targets to proc the Thermal Bomb. Now both weapons are ideal because they both have status power that we need to reach that 90% cap for the enemies to remain a little longer in Ash and vulnerable. Damascus Offering is a little better for survivability, it gives you a little more skill life leads, but my favorite weapon for now is the Thunderbird. For the secondary weapon, the Guillotine or the Anemo Shotgun, huge amounts of damage with Radiation Splash and Money Winds, just something to switch very often because Thunderbird procs every second, so you can spam it. And for the sidearm, I'm not using it at all. I have tried the Bolt and Thunder or Disintegrator, take a little more advantage of the ultimate damage link. However, the build-up is not worth it. You just can spam your weapon, debuff the enemies, and just kill the elites and bosses in a matter of seconds without the need of doing the shenanigans with the ultimate damage link. As far as our tree, we focus on the Ashbreaker to maximize the potential for the cooldowns of both the Feed of Flames and the Ash Blast. Now, as you can see, I didn't take Hot Situation because it doesn't increase our single target DPS, and I also didn't take the Conflagration. I prefer Curse of the Pompeii, so the Ash inflicted on enemies lasts longer, to take maximum value from the Trial of the Ashes and more Trial of the Ashes for 25% extra damage and another 20% from Ashen Boost. and I took, instead of hot situation, the trial by fire, another 5% increase to enemies afflicted by burn. So you see, if you add all the multipliers, we have the vulnerable, we have the branded, the death sentence, the trial of the assist, the mods, the trial by fire, so many multipliers are all together, and that's why you can just melt down the bosses, and you also have hair twice as long. If you want to increase your AoE capabilities, you can sacrifice trial by fire and get hot situation. This way your thermal bomb will deal a lot more damage to the enemies, and you can also sacrifice Curse of the Pompeii to conflagration to deal a lot more damage with your thermal bomb, although I haven't seen so much damage increase either using the conflagration or not, and personally I do prefer the Curse of the Pompeii for maximum value for Trial of the Ashes and Ashen boost. The rotation is actually pretty simple, with double thermal bomb to maximize the debuff of the enemies, Ash Blast to inflict Ash and the debuff, Feed the Flames just in case you want to deal a little more extra damage to the enemies, spam your primary weapon, switch to your secondary weapon for a huge chunk of damage, switch to your primary weapon, keep shooting until your thermal bomb is back, spam it once again against the boss, and I think most of the bosses won't survive a third onslaught of thermal bomb if you have the best setup. You don't need to do anything else, and against the mobs it's easy to just thermal bomb someone very far, Ash Blast so they can just remain still, and one shot of your weapon will trigger thermal bomb for maximum damage. That's why you can basically snipe enemies using thermal bomb, Ash Blast and your primary weapon to just inflict some detonation damage, and that's why this is one of the best builds without investing on survivability. You can survive by remaining in long range, inflicting Ash and picking up the enemies from there. So what about advantages and disadvantages of the build? Advantages, there are many. One of the best single target DPS without investing in firepower. You can melt down the bosses using the mods and the debuffs and everything else. You can do it in medium or long range. If you go to close range, you can inflict a huge chunk and then retreat to long range as you shoot with your primary weapon to destroy everything. You can pick up enemies afar using the thermal bomb and your primary weapon. The only thing that it lacks is the maximum, let's say, AoE compared to other builds. However, it has the best potential for single target and debuffing. One of the best things I think you can run with a group to debuff the enemies, help increase your damage and your allies' damage by a lot, and make a huge difference. Overall, this is definitely one of my new favorite builds I have run with my Pyromancer. Very easy, not the best timers, but it's very fun to run. You can decimate the elites and bosses that can have problem. You can pick up the enemies, crowd control them, take position. It's ideal. I wish I could try this in multiplayer. However, you will see in the description I have had a very bad experience with multiplayer, lost my resources. That's why I'm reluctant to join multiplayer. However, if things get stable again, or if I find some friends that won't cause the problems with multiplayer, I may join with this build to just test it, how it runs. And I believe this is one of the best potential group builds that you can run. And that was it for today's video. I really hope this will help you build your own Reforged Pyromancer single target debuff DPS build to enjoy Challenge Area 15 expedition solo or with your friends. So feel free to like if you liked, and you can subscribe for more upcoming videos for Outriders New Horizon and other video games. And as always, I wish you all a wonderful day.